Hey, Christian, what's the one thing that I can almost guarantee is stopping you dead in your tracks from being an animal in evangelism? Whether you even know it or not, here it is. Example. And I can relate. That's why on this episode of the Equipping Evangelist, I'll personally testify to what I call the ferocious effect of example in evangelism. So I warmly welcome you to the Equipping Evangelist. My name's Cory McKenna, and I serve as founding president of the Cross Current and Equipping Evangelists. And Christian, let me ask you a very, very practical and personal question. When's the last time, think about this, when's the last time you saw with your own eyes and heard with your own ears another more experienced Christian in gospel witness sharing the gospel with a non-Christian in like real time outside the walls of your church? Like, honestly, have you ever seen that happen? Because if truth be told, I'd been serving for like 5+ years as a pastor of discipleship in a local church, and I had never seen that sort of example in evangelism until well, I want to open scripture to unleash a very you get the pun there, to unleash a very personal testimony to the ferocious effect of example, specifically in evangelism, okay? And this isn't just for me. This isn't even just for you. This is for your family. This is for your church, and it's certainly for engaging the culture. So I want to go to my life's verse. You got one of those, your life verse. My life verse, in the New International Version, it says, "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." 1 Corinthians 11:1. In the ESV translation, it says, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." We know that Christian discipleship is all about imitation. More specifically, instructing and inspiring, others to imitate your example as you imitate the example of Christ. Now, that's really totally true of every discipline of the Christian life, but I am the Equipping Evangelist, so my space here is evangelism. So I want to share a real-life illustration about the power of example as it specifically applies to evangelism, to gospel witness, and also explains why Tony back here, is standing there and staring at you, all right? My favorite animal has always been a white Bengal tiger. When I was a kid growing up in the east coast of Canada, I had a picture on my wall of a white Bengal tiger, and I would stare at this animal. I was infatuated by the power and beauty of a white Bengal tiger. So much so that when I was younger, I'm kind of an old guy, this is pre-internet, I researched what would it take to buy a pet tiger. Now you can pull this off, but please hear this. This was the pre-internet research that I took upon myself. This is what it concluded. The way this works is when the tiger cub is born, it's immediately removed from its mother, and it grows up around your household, and over time, it totally loses its identity in its surroundings and really becomes totally domesticated, really not dangerous at all to deal with. But the warning, please hear this, the warning on the little kitty label, pet parents beware, here it is that if that tiger ever so much as sees the example of another tiger, there's a ferocious effect that's unleashed and you're in major trouble. But that only happens if it sees the example of another tiger. Well, fast forward my own life and witness. Again, I'd been serving for 5+ years as a pastor of discipleship, and I had no clue how to share the gospel with someone else. I had never seen that example. And so by God's grace, I found myself in the U.S. of A. of all places, and God gifted me with my first gospel outreach team leader, an equipping evangelist named Tony. And when I saw with my own eyes Tony when I saw him equip the saints for gospel witness together, when I saw him and heard him preach the gospel in the open air and give a cup of cold water to needy people on the streets of Los Angeles, when I saw him lead a whole church to do the same, I realized by God's grace, that's me. I had just never ever seen that example before, but it took the example of Tony to unleash that ferocious effect, which was really, that was the seed God planted in my heart to come back to my own hometown, to pioneer a ministry, to equip other saints for this work of the ministry. And in other words, what I want you to catch here, since being born again, folks, I had no idea how dangerously domesticated that I had become as a Christian until God used the example of another equipping evangelist named Tony to release that ferocious effect in me. And so the more tigers I trained with, the more and more I personally experienced that ferocious effect of example. But this vision gets even bigger because the Christian life isn't just about me at all, right? It's about we. It's about us together as the church. And as this tiger has been personally trained by more and more tigers, folks, God has refined this vision and mission in my life, and it's this: to see a tiger in someone else and to be a tiger for someone else. Now, you might be thinking, well, Cory, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me? Well, let me ask you this. This is how this directly applies to you, to your family, and to your church, okay? Do you know what a whole family of tigers is called? You ready for this? This is pretty cool. A streak of tigers. It's rare to see a family of tigers all together, but when you do, that is called a streak of tigers. And what would change? What would change in your own Christian walk? What would change in your family? What would change in your church? What would change in your community if you were to see a tiger in someone else and be a tiger for someone else? And God trained up a streak of tigers in every category of Christian life: marriage tigers, family tigers, work tigers, missions tigers, and of course, evangelism tigers. I am the equipping evangelist after all. But it just takes one tiger. One tiger. Will you be that tiger? Because that, folks, that is what I call the ferocious effect of example, and just a glimpse of the beautiful and powerful picture that I hope to help you see come to life in your own life, in your family life, and in the life of your church. So with all that in heart and mind, do you have any questions that I could help answer about evangelism and your church? Now, to submit those, go to The Equipping Evangelist. Click on that Got Questions, Get Answers button. Those come directly to me. I would love to answer those either directly or perhaps even here on the podcast. And will you also please subscribe to and share this podcast with others? You know how this works. And so if you click the subscribe button to listen every week, you can get your entire church equipped for evangelism together. And then please share this podcast with all of your Christian contacts to multiply gospel ministry in and through the local church. And may God bless you and your church as you get equipped for evangelism together.